And turning now to more local coverage, feuding motorcycle clubs have authorities on high alert tonight. We continue tracking Saturday night's shooting out of Pawtucket.
Motorcycle gang member in West Columbia is behind bars after being convicted of trafficking methamphetamine.
Have you ever thought that those roaring Harley motorcycles on American highways not only carry the wind of freedom, but also conceal a massive criminal empire? Just in one stormy night in the suburbs of Chicago, the deafening explosion around 3 in the morning woke up the entire United States. An ordinary warehouse suddenly became the center of a dark alliance between Hell's Angels and the two most bloodthirsty cartels in Mexico, Sinaloa and Jalisco New Generation. Hundreds of kilograms of drugs, military weapons, and cross-border logistics networks were exposed. This is no longer a street war, but a silent battle on every highway. Are you ready to explore this terrifying truth? This week, the government officially designated the bloodthirsty cartels and dangerous gangs as foreign terrorist organizations. At 2:49 in the morning, the first explosion echoed, shattering the midnight silence in the industrial suburbs of Chicago. A lone DEA helicopter circled above the rain-soaked roof of an ordinary-looking logistics warehouse named Iron Freight Logistics. Below, federal agents took cover in position, every muscle tensed, guns aimed at the closed roll-up door. In an instant, the door blasted inward. Gunfire erupted, and the massive operation codenamed Operation Iron Horse was activated. An unprecedented multi-state effort targeting a secret alliance stretching from outlaw biker clubs to Mexican cartel. From its roots as a rebellious motorcycle club, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club has evolved into something far more dangerous. An underground pipeline transporting drugs and weapons under the cover of interstate commerce. Operating in the shadows, their network hides cargo trucks and refrigerated containers running through states and even to Canadian border routes. Meanwhile, the Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel supply the goods and direct operations from the darkness. The question is not just how the U.S. government uncovered this plot, but how long it had been operating in the shadows. This was no street-level bust. It was a strategic strike in a war over logistics, money, and influence. The mistake here is not just in the arrests. It could lead to large-scale violence or international backlash. Before diving deeper, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the full breakdown on the tactics, the players involved, and the massive risks. In the early 1960s, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club emerged as an icon of countercultural rebellion. Leather jackets, roaring Harley bikes, open roads, and rules defiantly broken. Over the decades, that loose image quietly evolved into a much tighter structure. Chapters operating like semi-military cells, with protection around leadership and supply chains, rituals, and codes. Researchers note the club aggressively expanded into the Midwest as part of a broader strategy to exploit new territory. As the powerful Mexican cartels like the Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel pushed deeper into the U.S. market, the Hells Angels transformed once again. They became reliable logistics partners. They provided trucking companies, interstate hauling capabilities, legitimate paperwork, and a normal facade with legally registered transport fleets and registered trucking firms as fronts. The cartels found new safe corridor. According to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other agencies, some of these routes stretch from Arizona and Texas through Illinois up to the Great Lakes, even farther into Canada. Cargo manifests list industrial components or machinery parts, but behind those labels lies contraband. In the heart of the Midwest, Chicago has become a critical hub. The network of highways and cargo terminals provides an ideal camouflage. Federal analysts point out that in the 3 years past, the Midwest has witnessed a sharp increase in synthetic opioid seizures. While estimates vary, an internal assessment describes fentanyl shipments moving north through Canada and east through arteries along the Great Lakes. In reality, this means Hells Angels infrastructure, warehouses, truck yards, trucking registrations serves as camouflage for large-scale transport of drugs, cash, and weapons. Front companies handle trucks that appear legitimate and pass regulatory checks even while carrying multi-load methamphetamine or fentanyl. Domestic law enforcement reports reveal how legitimate shipping paperwork can accompany contraband without raising suspicion. The significance lies in the scale and the reality that the cat-and-mouse game has shifted. What was once street-level smuggling has turned into large-scale logistics operations spanning states and borders. But if the Hells Angels had built a perfect logistics empire hidden among American highways, how did federal agents finally discover the crack? On a late night in Joliet, Illinois, federal intelligence began flashing warning signals. An ordinary warehouse in the city suburbs registered under the name Iron Freight Logistics received repeated shipments labeled as truck parts from border states. Agents monitoring the site noted trucks arriving from Arizona and Texas and heading toward the Chicago area. Something in the pattern didn't match. The volume, timing, origin. For many months, the warehouse appeared legitimate on paper. However, insiders suspected otherwise. The Drug Enforcement Administration (DEA) secretly placed tracking chips into containers as they left the border area. That container completed its run, matching the Sinaloa cartel's logistics route. According to government announcements, a semi-truck network linked to Sinaloa and other cartels had been blocked, carrying large drug loads through cargo channels. When the container rolled into Chicago, interagency coordination reached maximum levels. The Federal Bureau of Investigation collaborated with Homeland Security and state police for the strike that initiated the chain of events. When the raid unfolded, inside the warehouse was a massive stockpile. Hundreds of kilograms of methamphetamine, pounds of cocaine, packages of MDMA, and a significant amount of fentanyl along with military-grade weapons. These were not the typical handguns of street gangs. Investigators found assault rifles traced back to Mexican military arsenals. The firepower was at a systematic level. In the ensuing chaos, gunfire erupted. Some suspects were killed, many others injured, and part of the building caught fire when explosive devices were deployed. The outcome was both dramatic and grave. Evidence that this was not a simple drug bust, but a confrontation between U.S. law enforcement and a hybrid criminal logistics network. However, the biggest surprise came after the smoke cleared. Amid the wreckage of cargo crates, the FBI found an encrypted radio system with identifiers linking directly to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. That discovery confirmed what had been whispered. This network is not controlled by a single cartel, but is a joint venture between Sinaloa and CJNG, using biker-based freight companies and outlaw motorcycle groups as the backbone of a transnational supply chain. Suddenly, a local warehouse becomes a hub in a global pipeline. From Chicago westward to the border, the routes are operational. The consequences are massive. U.S. agencies are not just disrupting local dealers, they are severing the supply lines and logistics that sustain cartel power. The conflict has shifted from street corners to interstate highways and cargo yards. The Chicago raid ended in smoke, fire, and silence, but as the debris cooled, investigators realized they had only scratched the surface. If one warehouse held that much firepower, how many more were out there, hidden behind clean business licenses and glossy company logos? After cargo hubs were exposed in the United States, investigators followed leads northward into Ontario and Quebec, Canada. The trail began with low-profile entries, warehouse rentals in the Montreal suburbs, harmlessly labeled containers arriving at the Port of Montreal, and local biker club chapters linked to the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club operating quietly on Canadian territory. Canadian agencies have long warned that outlaw motorcycle gangs are intertwined with transnational drug operations. What emerges is a sophisticated northern pipeline, a reverse flow system where drugs move from U.S. border states or Mexico northward into Canada, while cash, weapons, and illicit profits flow south. In one seizure, Canadian border officials noted a container arriving at the Port of Montreal declared as automobile parts. Inside, however, were hidden compartments. The concealed bays contained synthetic opioids and cocaine. Meanwhile, money linked to that shipment flowed backward through offshore accounts and anonymous crypto wallets. Canadian media reports connections between biker club activities and the Sinaloa cartel, moving thousands of kilograms of cocaine and marijuana through Canada. Investigators trace the finances to cryptocurrency exchanges and offshore entities in lightly regulated jurisdictions. In one case, millions of dollars in crypto assets were tracked to wallets that only conducted unlabeled transfers to shell companies registered in the Caribbean. This is no longer old-style money laundering through real estate alone. It has become logistics plus technology. The Cartel 4.0 model. Freight companies and legitimate ports, refrigerated containers, shipping manifests, digital cash flows, all blended into the operation. Technology makes it difficult for oversight agencies with the volume and speed of transactions. The involvement of Hells Angels in Canada adds an important dimension. Did you ever suspect that Hells Angels, once a symbol of freedom, would become logistics partners for Mexican cartels? Canadian records show the club has chapters in Ontario and Quebec operating not just as biker gangs, but as transportation and support networks. Those chapters provide ground infrastructure, drivers, storage facilities, local communications, and members responsible for overseeing shipments. At the same time, cartel operatives based in Mexico or the United States control the supply sources and strategic direction. With the dominance of the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico declining in some corridors, the Jalisco New Generation cartel is aggressively advancing into the U.S. Midwest and the northern routes. This shift means CJNG is using Hells Angels and Canadian facilitators as outsourced logistics partners, a type of rented rather than fully owned infrastructure. That surprise reframed the entire network. What appeared as local biker freight companies were actually arms of a larger cartel agenda. Mapping the routes, agencies discovered refrigerated trucks carrying goods from Illinois or Michigan, crossing the border into Ontario via Windsor or the Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, unloading near distribution yards, then heading east to Montreal for container transfers. On the return leg, weapons and cash were bundled and sent south through the same corridors or routed along Great Lakes shipping lanes to U.S. ports. The two-way flow makes the northern pipeline efficient and hard to block. Once the chain was understood, law enforcement described it as a full supply chain architecture operating invisibly within legitimate commerce. The severity of this structure cannot be overstated. When biker club chapters become the ground arm of a cartel transportation network, the threat goes beyond street-level drug dealing. It becomes a supply chain war with national security implications. Canadian agencies confirm Hells Angels MC has the largest number of full charter chapters in the country outside the United States. Meanwhile, U.S. federal threat assessments point out that Mexican transnational criminal organizations maintain distribution cells in American cities and use third-party transportation companies and gangs as intermediaries. The results of these findings are twofold. First, it reveals that law enforcement strategy must shift from blocking street dealers to dismantling global logistics networks. Second, it reveals that CJNG's move into the Midwest and the Northern Corridor is part of a long-term strategy to replace Sinaloa's declining influence. With Canadian roads and trucking infrastructure quietly supporting transit, the network achieved unprecedented camouflage. With the northern pipeline exposed and cartel money moving faster than law enforcement can trace, a haunting question lingers in Washington. How to fight an enemy moving through your own highways, banks, and data networks. After the massive Chicago raid explosion, U.S. federal law enforcement did not just log it as another bust. Instead, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Drug Enforcement Administration, and Department of Homeland Security quickly established an internal unit called the Hybrid Threat Task Force. This new unit is designed to counter criminal networks that no longer fit the traditional mold of drug cartels or street dealers. They are the logistics arms of global cartels operating like semi-military supply chains. Public statements from the FBI make clear that the Bureau now ranks transnational criminal organizations as a top priority. Immediately after Chicago, investigators expanded the net into Indiana, Wisconsin, and Missouri. In joint federal and state operations, agents seized dozens of tons of drugs, intercepted more than 50 trucks equipped for covert transport, and confiscated millions in cash profits. Although the exact total remains classified, internal documents and local press confirm these seizures dwarf many previous regional operations. One Midwest law enforcement official described it as the largest cargo truck interdiction in our history. The shift is clear. The war has grown beyond cities and street corners into highways, cargo yards, and interstate logistics. As analysts gathered in secure rooms, a stark warning echoed. Outlaw motorcycle groups are no longer mere street criminals. They operate like military-style logistics units. This is not exaggeration. In threat assessment reports, security analysts note that such networks resemble semi-military organizations in structure, mobility, and firepower. The implication is that the United States is facing criminal entities with capabilities once reserved for battlefield adversaries rather than drug dealers. Therefore, U.S. national security officials are beginning to treat biker cartel networks not just as criminal groups, but as threats to national stability. With supply chains running through interstate routes, transporting synthetic opioids, cash, and weapons, the network challenges the boundary between organized crime and irregular warfare. Previously, the DEA's annual National Drug Threat Assessment has emphasized Mexican transnational criminal organizations as the greatest drug crime threat to the United States. Now, the conversation delves deeper. We must disrupt not just the product, but the pipeline and the infrastructure behind it. To do that, the new task force is equipped with technology and methods typically associated with military intelligence operations rather than standard police work. Drones fly over choke points in cargo corridors. Traffic camera data is fed through artificial intelligence platforms to detect truck movement patterns matching known cartel logistics profiles. Financial signal analysis tools sift through millions of transactions to uncover crypto wallet transfers or offshore banking traffic linked to freight fronts. One agent described it as a silent war. No military boots on the ground, but trucks, bites, and drones. The tactical shift reflects an evolving threat. By leveraging commercial transportation platforms and digital finance, the networks force U.S. agencies to adapt. Where patrol cruisers or local task force operations would never spot a disguised RFID tag on a tractor trailer, the hybrid task force can. Where financial regulators have no reason to chase shell company wallets, task force analysts do. They operate in the gray zone between crime and conflict. This approach echoes broader defense thinking about hybrid threats, blending traditional and non-traditional elements. But perhaps the most urgent question hangs in the air. If these cartels have already mastered using legitimate trucks and hidden banking systems, the next step is what? Task force leaders believe the coming phase could involve massive sea shipments, containerized weapon flows, or coordinated cyber financial platforms supporting global money laundering. In essence, the United States is preparing for a supply chain war where the adversary deploys no infantry, but trailers, servers, and darknet wallets. By the end of this phase, the operational message is clear. The U.S. government will no longer treat biker clubs or freight trucking companies as isolated criminal entities. They are infrastructure nodes, parts of a larger war machine, and agencies now recognize that victory means controlling routes, monitoring highways, and disrupting finances as much as arresting street dealers. After Operation Iron Horse, the illusion of safety in America's heartland was shattered. The operation made one thing unmistakably clear. The U.S. border is no longer a line in the desert. It now runs through every highway, cargo yard, and digital payment network across the nation. What began as a tactical raid on a Chicago warehouse exposed something far larger and more alarming and witnessed the transformation of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club from an icon of open road rebellion into the operational arm of two of the world's most powerful cartels. The leather jackets and roaring engines that once symbolized freedom have become camouflage for a transnational criminal machine controlled by the Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel. Over the decades, these groups relied on border smuggling and street-level pushers. But the Chicago raid uncovered a new kind of battlefield, built on trucks, cargo terminals, and encrypted financial systems. It's no longer just about drugs, it's about logistics. Every highway off-ramp, every cargo manifest, every offshore account has become part of a silent war to control the nation's supply arteries. Hells Angels are no longer just bikers. They are the invisible couriers of a global criminal economy. In response, federal agencies moved swiftly. The FBI, DEA, and Homeland Security united under a new initiative called the Hybrid Threat Task Force, a coalition designed to strike networks blending domestic gangs with international cartels. Instead of chasing street dealers, they targeted distribution chains. Instead of patrolling alleys, they mapped data routes. Drones replaced patrol cars, and AI tracking replaced stakeouts. What was once a street war has become a contest of intelligence, information, and endurance. The line between military strategy and law enforcement has blurred, and the United States has begun combating cartels in the same way it counters foreign adversaries. From the story of Operation Iron Horse, the biggest lesson for us is the terrifying camouflage of modern crime. What seems most familiar and ordinary, the truck rolling down the highway, the suburban logistics warehouse, the trucking company with full paperwork, can conceal an entire transnational criminal network. We no longer live in a world where danger only comes from dark street corners or distant borders. The threat now lies right in the everyday flow of society. The takeaway is to always stay vigilant, recognizing that national security depends not only on law enforcement forces, but also on the awareness of every citizen to seemingly minor anomalies around them. From an iconic motorcycle club symbol of freedom on the highways, Hell's Angels has quietly transformed into the logistics arm for Mexico's two most powerful cartels, turning every American road into a silent battlefield. Operation Iron Horse didn't just bust a warehouse in Chicago, it exposed an enormous network transporting drugs, weapons, and money across borders from the Midwest to Canada. The drug war is no longer on street corners, it's right there in the everyday trucks rolling past you. What do you think about this terrifying shift? Does the government have what it takes to control these criminal highways? Drop your comments below, share your thoughts, and don't forget to like and share the video if you find it scary. See you in the next one.